What's up everyone, Jason at Canyon Adventure Vans, and today we have a 2018 Winnebago Revel here, and I wanted to show you something and kind of give you an overview of it and a little bit of an install tips. It's something very similar to what we're already selling for the newer Mercedes chassis, and this will kind of give you an overview on how to install it. So, look at that. These are our stop stay door struts. This is a 2018 Sprinter van for Winnebago Revel. And all we had basically to do is just change out the driver's side bracket. All the other brackets are exactly what you're gonna use for the newer models. So right here, this is the same install, same thing on the passenger side. What we have to do is, what you'll end up doing is taking our bracket, lining it up with these holes, and then just taking a little marker and then marking this plastic right here, because on a Revel, on any other 2018, you might not have this plastic, but on the Revel you have it, so you have to notch that out. We used a little oscillating tool. You can do it a million different ways, but it's just plastic, so just cut that plastic. Whatever you're using to cut this plastic, you can probably do the same thing here. So you're just gonna notch that out after you line the holes up, make a mark, notch it out, and then you bolt it right in. Super easy. And then over here, same thing, you're gonna notch it out, you'll line everything up, and then you'll take your marker, mark it, and then notch that out, and then everything else is still the same. You'll take these screws off and then screw it back on, and then put on your new door stop. So really easy. This took me probably 5 minutes to notch out each side, and now we have these in stock, ready to ship for the anywhere 2017, 2018, and the older model Mercedes Sprinter van. So as you can see, the other little note as well is, when you go to install this strut, you'll install it on this ball here first, and then when you slide it over here, it's gonna come out about an inch too far, okay? You'll see that it comes out an inch too far. So what you do is, on the older models, you have this door lock, door stop. You kind of open it up, pull it back. You want this loose, and then you can put your door strut on here. So very important, you gotta open this, open it up, put your door strut, and then you can pull it back and then lock it, and then that's it. So you're gonna get this on here and you're gonna be like, oh, this door strut's too long. No, it isn't. Just unlock this, open it up, lock it down, and then you're good to go. And as you can see, these things are flawless. It works perfect, very smooth stop on them, and it came out really great. So check it out, canyonadventurevans.com. These are the stop stay door struts for the older Mercedes Sprinter vans. Talk to you soon.
So we've got a few options here that I'm gonna kind of go over, but this will kind of cover a variety of different tools that you can use and that should be used. First tool would be a ratchet or an impact drill here with a T30 bit on it. That's gonna help you take off those OEM bolts that are on the door. You're gonna need a 3/16 Allen. I like this T-handle, I'll show you why later. I also have a 3/16 Allen on this ratchet to make installing it quicker. You could also have a 3/16 Allen in your impact as well. One other tool you're gonna need, standard drill, Phillips bit. This may or may not be applicable to you. We're working on a Revel today, so there's a couple screws that we're gonna take out to get out of the way. So drill, Phillips bit, flathead screwdriver, and or a pin remover like this. Tape measure might come in handy. I'll show you kind of a couple different ways of doing things. So tape measure can come in handy, blue tape can come in handy. This is a kind of manual riv nut gun that will help us get those riv nuts fastened into the van. And this is going to be a pneumatic riv nut gun here. This thing's awesome. If you do have an air compressor, I'd highly recommend getting one of these. Riv nuts are something that you can install on your van for various different things. There's other aftermarket products that we install that also use riv nuts. So getting a riv nut gun, whether manual, pneumatic, they even make them that are, battery powered as well, but so far this thing has been just amazing to use. I was a little scared to try it at first, if I'm being honest, but you know, this one works great as well. It's just a little harder to do, and once you kind of get exposed to this technology here, there's really no turning back. As far as cutting, we are going to be cutting the rear bumper trim panel that I was showing you in the beginning. If you have a pneumatic, you know, cutter like this thing works great. One downfall of this is that it has a thin blade, so as you're cutting, the plastic kind of fuses back together, but it is nice because you can get into the tight spaces a little better with this. You're gonna have a lot more bending and kind of finessing with this one. So I like using this because I use jigsaws all the time, but I will show you the difference of the two. Another tool that could be handy is a multi-tool oscillating tool with an oscillating blade on it. Personally, haven't used this yet. I know these are great for so many different applications. So if you have one of these, it might be worth it to try it. The main two I'm gonna show you today are gonna be the pneumatic cutter and the jigsaw cutting. One other thing you're gonna need is some spray paint. You can do a spray can. You can also do, I like to call it nail polish, but this kind of form of paint works well as well. You can kind of get this in there and get the inside of the hole that we're gonna drill. So I personally like using this kind of nail polish one. It's a little less likely to get overspray or get anything else painted, but a spray can works as well. Rust-Oleum products are great. Anything that's gonna kind of help cover that surface so that the raw metal doesn't rust is kind of the idea of that part. So last would be a battery powered or cord powered, if you're close to your garage, vacuum. That's gonna help you clean up some metal bits that are gonna inevitably happen. Now we'll go ahead and open up the box. This is pretty much how it's gonna be delivered to you. So you can take a razor blade or scissors and carefully cut our branded tape here open. And cut down the center here. And inside, you're gonna see this beautifully designed and beautifully executed Cav branded box here that holds all of the parts inside that you're gonna need. So as you open it up, you're gonna see your struts in there. So you can pop those out. And then you're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of guarded compartments here. A middle compartment, which just has a little sticker, some Canyon information there. As you pull open these covers here, you're gonna reveal what's underneath those. All right, so up first, this is going to be the door bracket, the bracket that goes on the door. And you'll see here, there is a D for driver. And when you go ahead and install this, obviously we're gonna show you in a second, but you're just wanna make sure that you can read the D as it's intended to be read. Example, right here, that's a backwards D, that's not how it's gonna be installed. So when you're installing it, you're gonna be able to see that D read the way it's supposed to be. You're also gonna have another D here on this bracket. This is the bracket that's gonna go on that trim panel on the bumper, or on the back of the van there. Right here is gonna be your hardware kit. We'll go over that in just a second. P is gonna be for passenger side. This is the one that goes on the rear trim. And P on this bracket is gonna be for passenger side door. So this is the door bracket. So come around here. This is going to be your hardware bag, and it's gonna have everything you need in it. So I'll just explain it as we pull it out here. You've got some 3/8 spacers here. We'll get into those later in the install, but essentially these spacers go underneath this to kind of help keep the surface level when you go on top of that trim piece. It'll make sense later. You're also gonna have 2 drill bits. One drill bit is going to be 5/16. What that allows for is a pilot hole to be drilled through these brackets. That's kind of a optional way of installing this. I'm gonna show you multiple ways here today of doing it, but that's what this is intended for, is to be the pilot hole that fits through these holes. And then you're gonna have a noticeably bigger drill bit that comes in the pack as well, and that's gonna be designed to be the specific diameter of your riv nuts that come in your kit. So moving right along, you're gonna have 8 riv nuts that come in your kit. Only 6 are gonna be needed. We gave you 2 extras because sometimes these don't go as planned and you'll need to drill it out or cut it out. Hopefully that doesn't happen because it's not a very fun process. But we do give you 2 extras. You have 6 bolts here. Those are the 6 bolts that go to the 6 rib nuts you're going to be needing. And that's it. That's all that's included in that hardware kit. The rest is, you know, all tools that you're going to need to provide on your own or depend on a professional installer like us, Canyon Adventure Vans or Owl Off-Road. They're doing them as well, and I think there's other dealers that are out there doing them too. But if you have all the tools that we mentioned in the beginning and you feel like you can do this, then more power to you. But that is the hardware kit there. All right, a couple disclaimers I want to mention. In the beginning of sourcing all the materials for these kits and developing this product, there are some kits that might look a little different than what you're seeing here. So one of the main things is going to be that we went ahead and just made it simple and went to the specific drill bit size that you're going to need for these riv nuts. So as I mentioned, 5/16, that's going to be in every kit. That hasn't changed at all. But some of our first kits included a step bit. And that step bit was designed so that you could drill all the way in and go to the final, you know, final tier there, and that would be the size of your riv nut that you need. We got rid of these and went ahead with the specific drill bit size that you need for those riv nuts. So that would be one discrepancy that you might be seeing in your kit versus what we have here. One other thing would be these brackets. Originally we had a different installation process where we were trying to just drill through these and not have to make a cutout, but we determined that the cutout method that I'll show you in a second is the best way of installing these. So all that leads to the fact that we have these installed for you now ahead of time. So in previous install videos and in previous packages, these weren't installed already. That was something that the dealer or the person installing it was going to need to do, but now these are installed. So there's no more needing to put the ball on the bracket. All 4 of your brackets should come with the ball already tightened on there, nice and tight for you, so you don't have to worry about that part. That's the only discrepancies I can think of right now. If anything else comes up in the install video, I'll let you know, but that's the main thing, is just the step bit. Instead of that, you'd have the specific size drill bit that you need for the rib nuts in the kit, and these brackets will have the ball on it. So next we'll meet you over at the van and we'll get this installed. All right, before we get into the actual install, I just want to show you on this scrap piece of metal here how these riv nuts work, and I'm going to use 2 different methods to do it. But what we've already done that you didn't see, drilled out these holes. So this is a scrap piece. I went ahead and made these holes a little bigger with the drill bit that's specifically sized for these riv nuts. And just like we're going to do on the actual van, it's best to dry fit these first, make sure they fit in there. One step that I'm not going to show you on this would be painting these holes, but when we get to the van, it's much better to dry fit them, make sure they actually fit in that hole before you paint it, so that you're not painting it twice if you find out that this doesn't fit in that hole. So that being said, we'll go ahead and do our first one here. We're going to use the manual method here with the tool that we recommend you get if you don't want to upgrade to a pneumatic or other tool. And you're going to be using the 5/16 mandrel that's going to be in your kit with this tool. So we'll go ahead and open up these arms here, and then we're just going to thread this riv nut all the way on, okay, until it's just kind of firmly tightened there, not too crazy. And then now we can go ahead and put this in here. So as you can see, we're trying to get this riv nut pressed as flat as possible onto the piece here. This is going to be ultimately the van that we're going into, but just showing you how this works. So then once we kind of get that in there, we're going to keep a downward force, keeping that riv nut flat there, and then give some good power into this and squash that riv nut in there. It does take a little bit of strength to do this, but once you get it started, it'll go. So now, as you can see, if you can get a shot underneath here, we've compressed this riv nut in there, and that's holding it in place. Now, as we open these back up, you can see that we got a little bit of play here. So now you can grab this top handle here, twist that clockwise, and that's gonna feed you in more into the riv nut. And now we can grab another one here You may or may not need this, but oftentimes you can get just a little bit more of a squeeze on there just to make sure you're good. And that's how that works. Now you can go ahead and back this out counterclockwise. And now it's locked in nice and tight. Okay. Shouldn't be any spinning or any slop or anything like that in there. Now we're gonna go ahead and feed this onto our pneumatic gun. We're just gonna thread this on clockwise. Okay, this specific gun we have, there's the brand. I'm not gonna try to pronounce that, but it has a forward and a reverse. So forwards is what we're gonna use. I'm not gonna hit that now or we'll compress this, but that's what we're gonna use to tighten it in. So same thing as the other manual gun. We're gonna push this all the way in, downward pressure, keeping this nice and flat here. We're gonna hit that forward button. Yours may or may not have forward and reverse, but we'll go ahead and do that. And you'll see it's pretty quick. So hold that in, go until it's nice and tight, and then I can hit the reverse button to back me out. Now if I want, I can go and grab another one, but judging by the sound of the gun, I don't need it, but I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, nice and tight. As you can see, I didn't get red in the face or start shaking or anything like that because this is way easier to use than this here, but nevertheless, you can use either option. So just to kind of show you how this riv nut works, threading it in, you're basically compressing it. This extra metal has nowhere to go, so it compresses onto the backside and essentially gives you a nut when you can't get on the backside of something. So that is the riv nut tutorial. All right, step number one. If you have roll F bug screens or anything that's impeding on this back trim angle here, like we do have here, this roll F bug screen, you're gonna wanna just get that out of the way. So in our case, it's 2 Phillips screws on each side. We're just gonna back these out. That'll just get it out of our way and make things easier on us. So back that out. We can keep these here on this owl hitch step. Okay, and you're probably gonna find lots of goodies if you've been taking your van out on trips and actually using it. You're gonna find some dirt and straw and whatever else. So already we can use that vacuum I recommended. Clean up a little bit. Using your pin remover or a flathead screwdriver, we're gonna need to remove 4 of these clips here. So these you can just get under here like this. Pry those out, set those aside. Okay, and we just need 2 on each side. So those 2 and then these 2 right over here. And then you can go ahead and grab underneath here. You can use your screwdriver to pry that up. I just peel under with my fingers here. Just kind of pop this out so we have access to this portion right here. Same thing over here on the other side. Now we'll grab 2 plates that look like this. Okay, you're gonna have a P and a D. P is gonna go over here for passenger. Set that down. D over here for driver. So the orientation of this is gonna be like this. So the ball that should already be installed is gonna be closest to the entry of the van there. And essentially where this is gonna end up is right over the top of these tabs here. Now these tabs are gonna be removed, but that's how it's designed to sit there. Just kind of flush up against this edge here and flush on this edge here. So I'll show you a couple different ways you can mark this. So what you could do is, because this is angled up like this, you can lay this right on top of those tabs that I kind of mentioned, using this as your square. So I'm laying this on top, and essentially I can make my mark right here on the plastic, okay? Because when we make that cutout, we don't want any plastic showing over here. We want it to sit on top of plastic. So that's a good mark right there, and so is that. So I can go in right here, kind of get this square up against those edges, and and make my mark right on the inside there. Okay, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but I've made a mark right there. And then now I can go ahead and do one over here on this side as well. Okay, and now I have those 2 marks made. Now, this is where using a measuring tape can help. Okay, so if I hook my measuring tape on this back edge here, I can come over here to this first line that I made. It's about 2 inches. So then I can come over here to this line, hook my measuring tape on that edge, mark 2 inches. And now I have the lines I need. So I can come right across here, right across here. We'll of course use a straight edge to do that. Bracket works great for that. So just lining these up, come straight across that there, and then another one right here. And now when I lay this bracket back over the top with, you can see that, right? How that's on there, on that edge and on that edge. What I'm trying to check for is that I don't see those pencil marks. Because when we cut it out, we don't want the cut outside of this plate. We want it on the inside, tucked in, hidden away. So as I'm looking at this, I see that those lines are covered up. The only line I can see is this one, and that line is actually what this edge is gonna butt up right against that line. So I like all this. Now I can go ahead and cut along those lines. So the first edge I like to cut here, and Manny, our head installer here, he mentioned to do this as well before you make the mark, so I'm gonna kind of explain that. But what you can do is put your blade on your jigsaw right up against that edge there, and you're basically gonna just cut off this whole tab right here. So keep your hand, you know, firmly holding this, but make sure it's clear out of the way because you don't want to cut off a finger. So I got my blade right along there, and because there's a flat edge that I'm starting on, the blade's gonna kind of just follow that edge. So here we go. Okay, so now I've got this nice smooth edge here that if you were to do that first, you can kind of do what I was doing earlier, where you have an edge to line up against. Then you could, you know, mark this line, cut that tab. But essentially, once that's there, you know you're up against that edge, because that's ultimately where we want this. Is this right here goes right along this edge. Cool. So now I can take my jigsaw like this and kind of cut towards myself like this here. I'm just gonna cut straight along that line. I'll kind of show you where my original mark was. So 100% I would recommend, if you're gonna end up on either side of this line, you wanna be on the inside of this line. There's a little bit of space that you can get in there. You could come all the way over, you know, another almost ½ an inch. The only thing you don't want to leave plastic is where these are going to go. So, but you don't want to end up on this side, because now you're coming out into the dangerous territory over here. So this cut's a little trickier. You got to kind of bend this up if you're going to use your jigsaw. You got to get your jigsaw in there. Okay, so now I'm just going to cut this line. Okay, now that this is cut out, now you can use a razor, sander. You could even use probably the edge of your screwdriver and just kind of deburr this edge. That way nothing's in your way. All right, and we'll grab our vacuum again, because there's lots of fun stuff to clean up in there. So underneath here, there's these clips or tabs that go into these squares here. So these ones here are pretty simple. The ones that might give you a little problem are gonna be further back in here. So putting on a headlamp always helps, but there's one that's kind of right here That one, you want to make sure you get that first, because if you bend it back, then you're going to kind of keep having trouble with it. So what you can do is basically push your screwdriver against that pin and then push down, and that's going to allow that pin to go where it needs to go. And you'll know if it doesn't, because it'll be bubbled up, kind of like how it is right there. So you might need to try again. There we go. Now, as you can see, we made that cut nicely. I'm all the way pushed up against this edge, what's left of it, and I'm lined up right with this groove in here. And you can kind of push it up against this trim or kind of line it up flush with this edge, but essentially we want it right up against this trim here. And now we need to mark our holes. One tool I highly recommend for any garage is this long nose marker. As you can see, it's got a real skinny tip there with the marker on the end. That allows for situations exactly like this for us to be able to reach in and do it. So I can kind of push this straight in and do a nice roll around here and get all of that circle marked up. The downside of using just a punch straight in is that if you come in at an angle or miss what is exact center of that, you're gonna have problems, especially when we're doing something with riv nuts, because they do need to be pretty much exactly right under these holes. So now, as you can see, when I pull this off, we've made pretty well, I wouldn't call it perfect, but some pretty nice circles there that now we can punch the centers of. So now we'll grab a hole punch. Another tool I didn't mention in the beginning. I told you guys I might think of some things as we go. So now you can find kind of perfect center of that hole. And make your mark, check, yep, like that. Reinforce it. Okay, and I'm just going right to the center of each one of these marks. Perfect. So now we'll grab the 5/16 drill bit. And now you can just go ahead and drill these straight in. Again, what I like to do is put the bracket where it's supposed to go, drill through it with the pilot hole drill bit, the 5/16. Okay, so I can hold this in place right over those holes that I did and go ahead and drill straight down. We're really trying to hold this bracket in place so it doesn't move around on us. I'm trying to keep my drill as straight up and down as possible so that my hole that I'm drilling is right on with that dot that I made. And just so you know, this hole on the inside is going to be the hardest one to drill. This one goes through at least 2 pieces of sheet metal, whereas these are going to just be 1. So that one is going to be your hardest to drill. Now you can grab one of your bolts. Might as well grab all 3. And this is just kind of a safety method here. So we'll drill this out a little bit, make sure our bolt can slide into that hole. Okay, cool. So as I mentioned, you want these holes to all line up perfectly when we go to put that riv nut in. So putting this bolt into there holds this bracket in place so that the other holes that we're going to drill are kind of all based off of this. Because even if we make those marks as we start drilling, the drill bit might drag a little bit, that kind of thing. So we just want to make sure that these all stay right where they're supposed to be. So here we go for the second one. Okay, so now that we got those 2 in there, as you can see, there's still a little bit of play. So we want to make sure that these are, straight down into those holes. And as I'm looking over the top, I see that hole that I made, the marking I made, still looks right on. So should be good either way, but I like holding these bolts in there to keep us safe. So holding this bracket nice and tight there, going in for this 3rd hole, straight up and down with our drill bit and drill. Grab our 3rd bolt. And for anyone that is curious or wondering if the little bit of powder coat that comes off on here is going to cause any rust, it won't. These are aluminum brackets here, so, and then the bolt head's going to cover up any of that, powder coat that we knocked off, so don't worry about that. So cool, now we're looking over the top. Without these bolts in there, all the holes are lined up perfectly. So now we'll grab the bigger drill bit in the kit, throw that on our drill. And as you're doing this, Try not to apply too much pressure. With a big drill bit like this, it's gonna wanna catch the sheet metal, so you're really just kind of keeping it on top of there as straight as possible and letting the drill bit do the work. And as you go, you can kind of see the drill bit carving out what's gonna be the new hole. You want to keep that consistent around the edge. I don't know how really to explain that, but what you don't want is to start drilling your hole over this way or that way. So keeping the drill bit nice and straight, and also just keeping an eye as you go to make sure that that outer circle that's being formed is, you know, even around the pilot hole. And as you get closer and closer to it drilling through, it's gonna wanna catch on you, so keep a firm grasp of the drill in your hand so that if it does grab, you're not caught off guard and don't pop yourself in the mouth or something. Okay, so there it goes, it grabbed. Now you can put it in reverse, hollow that out. Okay, just make sure you got a nice even thing there. You can grab your riv nut at this time as you're going and dry fit it just to make sure your hole's big enough. Okay, so perfect, that slides right in. We don't have to slide it all the way in, just make sure it's good. We're gonna paint that, but just wanna make sure our hole's drilled to the right size. Okay, now we'll go to the next hole. And if it doesn't fit, all I'm doing is just kind of rolling the drill bit around just to kind of clean up those edges a little bit. Okay, fits nicely. Third hole, here we go. Okay. Now, clean up this mess we just made. You can also use an air compressor or a blower to kind of help clean some of this stuff out too. And now we will go ahead and do our paint part of it. If you're gonna use the spray paint method, I highly recommend taping off this edge right here. That way you don't end up with, you know, spray paint flooding out over to here. We like using this here, but if you're gonna spray paint, again, just tape it up. Okay, we'll let that dry and start on the other side now. So here's a little bit different of approach here. We're gonna just cut this side off first. So again, laying this blade right up against the edge there, keeping our hand out of the way. Okay, nice clean cut there. I was showing you a screwdriver on that side, but if you wanna get this shaved off quickly, really grab this like you're shaving your face or your legs, and just scrape that over the top. It gives you a nice clean edge. Now that just gives us a little bit more edge here to make this second mark. So with this pushed all the way on that edge, we can get to this mark right there, which is just right inside this bend. So right here, I'm just marking that right like that. Okay. And then we can mark this other edge. This one right here, just going shoot, shoot, shoot. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Okay, just to be safe, we'll check this measurement again. So the lat line, just under 2 inches. So we'll do the same thing over here. Just under 2 inches. Okay. Now we've got 2 marks right here, boom and boom. They're right at the measurement that we need. We use this as a flat, straight edge. Nice mark to follow there. And then we'll intersect with this over here, this other mark that we made back here. Okay, and again, just to make sure we're good, we lay this over the top and make sure that the only pencil line we can see is this one right here, on the inside, but we don't want to see these. We want this overhang to cover that. So as you can see, we are good. And we can get to cutting. All right. So Manny, head installer here, is telling me if you put your thumb right here carefully to kind of guide this so that it doesn't jump as much, kind of get the blade going and then slowly guide it in. Just be careful of the fingers underneath. Keep those out of the way. All all I'm doing is just keeping pressure on this kind of forward and down so that it's not grabbing the plastic and going all over the place. Sorry, I forgot we were gonna show you guys how to use this. We love our jigsaw, that's what we're comfortable with. I'll show you how this works though. We've already got this started. Either way. Okay, again, grab our razor blade, just clean this up. And then we can grab this again, just make sure we fit right. So ideally what we're looking for is this butts right up against that cut we made, and this side is kind of hooked, or at least flush with that right there. So that looks good. Now we can go ahead and clean out some of this mess here and put this back in place. All right, so again, we're gonna wrestle around with these pins down in here. Quite possibly the hardest part of the install. There we go. Oh man. All right, add that to the tools needed headlamp. Perfect. And with this, you're just making sure, like, you would see a kind of a bump in it here if those clips weren't in right. So if it all looks nice and flat, you got all the clips in. All right, so we're gonna lay this over the top. Something to point out is that some of these floors get installed at a little bit of a angle. So when we do this bracket, it's nice and tight up against this here. But on this side, we have a little bit more of a gap. So it's kind of up to you if you want it to stay consistent with this line here, if you want it pushed up. I'm gonna kind of meet halfway there and call that good. Also just trying to make sure we can still get our clip in right here. So that seems to be the best spot right there. So now I will mark my holes. Got all 3 of my holes marked. Punch the centers of them. Okay, lay this over the top. Make sure my center punches make sense. Yep, looks good. Okay, I'm gonna grab our pilot hole drill bit, 5/16. So again, go ahead and hold this in place where we want it. And we'll go ahead with that hardest hole first, the one with the 2 pieces of metal. And once you get started, you can go ahead, at least with the first one, and move that out of your way. Okay, so now we can throw in that first bolt. Okay, and again, that's just holding it in place where we want it, nice and straight over that hole. So now we can do our other holes. All right, last hole. Oh, cool. So we know those are where they need to be with the bolts because the bolts are going straight through. So now we can take our larger drill bit and make these holes bigger. Take the riv nut, make sure it slides in there. Cool, we're good. On to the next. And dry fit. Beautiful. Dry fit. Okay. Do another vacuum here. All right, time for paint. All right, while that's drying, we'll switch on back over to the other side to finish that. So we're gonna use the manual method first here. Do your stretches. And again, just spreading these arms out, threading that riv nut on all the way. And then we'll go ahead and do this furthest one here first, just to show that you can access all of this. If you do have stuff back here, it might be a little tricky to do it. You can kind of move over to the side here. It's a little tricky to get in there, but it is possible. And this one, you will notice, isn't perfectly flat. So that will, ultimately, your bolt's gonna come in at a little bit of an angle on that, but we're not at much of an angle there, so it shouldn't be a problem. But if you do run into some issues with that, I'll show you the solution to that in a second. But here we go, keeping that downward pressure and then loading up for the pull that we're gonna need here. You can kind of push it against your body or use both your arms if you're stronger than I am. And compress that into place. And then now we'll open these up again, thread this down a little bit more and just see if we can grab any more to get it a little bit tighter. I did feel a little bit go there, so Looks like we needed a little bit more. Then we'll go ahead and back this out. And there we go, first riv nut is installed. All right, now we'll switch over to the power tools. Same process here, threading this riv nut on to the gun, putting it into place here, keeping that downward pressure, making sure that riv nut's flat against the sheet metal there. We'll hit our forward button here and that's it. So that one's installed. We'll do our third one. Okay, straight down in there, downward pressure. All right, I just noticed that I have a little piece of metal in here. I don't know if you can show that or not, but if you don't see your riv nut sitting flat, check for that, because that could give us a little problem if the riv nut's not seated there properly. So I'm just kind of cleaning up the edge here. Should have done that before I painted. Now I'm gonna have to go back and paint it again, but keep an eye on that. All right, here we go again. We're putting this in here. There we go, much better. Now that's nice and flat up against the surface there. And here we go. All right, now we're gonna grab these spacers that came in your kit. Most vans that we've done so far have followed this same pattern of 2 3/8 in the back and 1/2 inch in the front. And what you can kind of do, the only one we've really ever had to change is this front one, and I think that today we might actually have to do that. If you kind of come down at eye level here, you can see that the spacer is just a little bit higher than this trim here, which is ultimately gonna cause this to be up a little bit, and it's gonna leave a little bit of a gap there. So today we'll be using 3 3/8 and not any 1/2 inch, at least on this side. And then as you lay your bracket over the top, you should see that as you push down, it's nice and tight on top of those spacers. And now we can grab these 3 bolts, gently kind of feed them through those spacers and over on top of the riv nut. So if you've done a great job of drilling out these holes, these bolts should kind of go right into place and thread nicely. So as you can see here, I'm just finger tightening these into here, and they seem like they're grabbing pretty easily. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I like this T-handle Allen for this, because not only can I gently kind of turn this, but if I am at some kind of weird angle or I gotta finesse it, I have some leverage to use on the bolt here to kind of get it to grab. So in this case, these are really lining up nicely. They're just going straight into the riv nuts as it was designed to. But I will say that sometimes the holes don't end up perfectly underneath, and you might have to kind of finesse those bolts over a little bit. Worst case scenario, if one of yours isn't lining up and it feels like it's gonna cross thread, try to finesse it as best as you can, but the solution's gonna be drilling out whatever problem, hole that you have. Let's say it's this back one, you would need to go up a size, maybe to a 3/8 or maybe even, a smaller size in between. That's gonna give you a little bit of play on this plate here. These are designed to fit perfectly in that hole, but if there is a case where your riv nut was installed a little bit off, you can go in and give yourself a little bit of play by opening up this hole, so that way your bolt can slide over to catch that riv nut. Again, these are aluminum, so don't worry about taking off that powder coat there. If you really need to make a big hole and it ends up showing underneath this head, then at that point you need to get yourself a washer to cover up that hole if you care about that showing or not. But ultimately it is designed so that this is nice and sturdy in place and that these go right through those perfect holes. So the way it's intended to be is just like we're doing on this side. Now that I say that, I hope that we don't have problems on the other side, but this is exactly how this is intended to go. These go right into the holes, nice and easy. And I'm kind of doing a little bit at a time here, just so I don't make anything out of whack. And as you start to see it compress, you can kind of do the same thing. Just move around, give them a nice even tighten. That way you're not pushing the plate up or sideways or anything like that. And if you've got power tools, you can use them, but I hate cross-threading things, so I like taking just a little bit extra time to hand tighten this stuff because it is not fun if you cross thread it. We'll show how to take a riv nut out when we're done here. All right, so now those are nice and tight. You go ahead and throw these pins in on this side. Okay, and these go back in with the mouth or divot, whatever you want to call it, facing outwards, just like that. All right, now you can grab your T30 bit. We got it on a impact gun here. I will show you this just so you can follow this method here, but you can make some subtle marks here of where this is. Ultimately, it's not gonna have much room to play anyways, and when we close the door, it's gonna find its spot. But if you do wanna make sure that this goes back to the factory, setting, you can make some marks there. So now we'll go ahead and take out these OEM bolts here. Okay, keep them close by, we're gonna need them right away. Okay, so we're taking our driver's side door bracket. You can read the D there. This is exactly how it's intended to go, like this. Okay, so now we can go ahead and feed back in these bolts. Okay, and we can push this bracket up to where it needs to be to get those lines right back where they want to go. Take our impact or whatever you're using to do this with that T30 bit. All right, and now make sure everything's out of your way, and you can go ahead and close this door. Just make sure that nothing's keeping it from opening or latching. I close it, it's nice and tight and latched. When I'm opening it, nothing feels like it's dragging, so that side's good. If you trust your impact and know that it's tight, great. You can go back by hand with a ratchet, make sure these are tight, but that side's done. We'll put the shock on in a second, but we'll go ahead and finish this side first. So same process, we got our 3 riv nuts. I'll even do one more, train the chest muscles with this one here. Okay, throw our riv nut on. All right, we'll go for this one this time. Nice and straight there into the hole. Oh, that takes some good muscle. It's the 2 sheet metal side. Pneumatic for the win. Woo-wee. Woo. All right, so that hole is the hardest to drill and the hardest to compress. All right, back to the easy life. All right, throw this on, flatten to the surface there. Okay, we'll test out our spacers again on this side. Not all of this stuff is the same on each side, so could be that we need the 1/2 inch on this one, we'll see. Yeah, still think 3/8 would be good over here. All 3 of our spacers are right over the riv nuts. Now we can take our bracket just like this with all the bolts hanging down. Ball pointed towards the back there, and just slide those into those spacers. And there we go. Hopefully these thread right into where they're supposed to go. Okay, got my first 2, here comes the 3rd. And I can't really translate the feeling of this over the camera, but this one does have a little bit of resistance. What's essentially happening is the bolt's dragging on the hole a little bit coming in, but you know what it feels like when something's getting cross-threaded, you should know when to back out, but if you feel a little bit of resistance, don't get too worried. But essentially these should just go right in. Okay, so again, just kind of tighten these a little bit at a time. Cool, throw these pins back in. All right, so now we're gonna move on to mounting our door bracket passenger side. If you'd like to make a mark of exactly where this is, you can come onto the back side, make a mark, but I'm gonna show you what we do, because ultimately at the end of the day, you just need to make sure that this hole right here goes over this without any resistance. That's the guide that helps close the door and keep it in place. So I'll show you how we fix that either way. We'll go ahead and take this out. Okay, keep this all right with you. Now we're going to take the passenger side. You can read the P. It goes right over those holes like that, and this is going to slide over the top. If you see this little bubble, that's the side that should be pointing out. If you see the face there, that would be his nose. You don't want the side that's pushing in like this, because then this is gonna rock back and forth. If you made your lines, you'll see those and you'll know which side's the back anyways, but just to make that clear, it goes right over the top like that. So we can hold it like this, put our bolts right in like that, and screw this right back in. Okay, what you could do is just tighten this as tight as you can with your hands here, and that's gonna kind of keep that tight but give you enough play to where when you close the door against this, it'll go right where it needs to be. But you can also kind of look on the back of those marks if you'd like to go that method. But really at the end of the day, we close this door, and go ahead and close this one nice and easy. Watch your head there. That's gonna push that in. And when we open the door, if we don't feel a drag, that means we're right where we need to be. If you open your door and it feels like it's hung up, then you need to kind of come in here, and you can open this door and move that bracket, but ultimately you just want that pin going right down the center of that. So we'll go ahead with this door open one more time. And you can kind of watch it as well, see if you see any resistance there, but we're good. So with all that being said, we can now tighten these up and lock it in. And now let's close it one more time just to make sure we're good. Okay, and this is a good example of a door that could have benefited from having stop stays to begin with. All this weight gets slammed and it can dent doors. So one of the reasons we created this product all to begin with, so it's a good door to show you. All right, one more thing. If you did take off the screws for your bug screen or anything that you have back here, now's a good time to put all that back in. So in our case, it's 4 screws. We'll just put these back in. Yours might be different. Now we will put our struts on. So you can grab either one. They're not specific to the side. And what we're gonna do is put it on with the chrome side out and this black side in. And what we can do, if you get a close up, is peel these pins out first. So what you can do is grab this side. So just so you see how it works, this pin goes through and ultimately holds the ball in place. So to get this out of the way, we're just gonna peel this back. Once we pulled it out to the side, we can pull it out like that. Keep these close by, you do not wanna lose them. Okay, same thing over here. We're just gonna grab the side that's out like that. Peel it back, being careful not to shoot it over to our neighbor's house. And there we go. And on this side, I recommend putting your door side on first. That's gonna allow you to have room to get your pin in. If you put this side on first and then go there, it's gonna be really hard to get that pin in. So as you can see there, it'll kind of drop into place there. And right there is a very small pinhole where this goes in. So right on the edge there. Once it's pushed all the way in, it's gonna fall right back into that collar there. And then now you can go ahead and rotate this all the way over to here. You're gonna need to open your door just a little bit. Make sure you check the outside that you're not gonna hit anything. And then you can drop that one into place, grab your pin that you put in a safe place, and find that hole again. It's gonna be on the left side. Push that pin all the way in. You might need to wiggle your door a little bit to get that all the way in there. And then it just rotates over into place. So we're good there. You can go ahead and give this a test. Perfect. Now we'll do the other side. All right, so again, pull both these off. Just peeling that back. Set it down, safe spot. Okay, on this one, you're gonna wanna put this side on first because the hole is on the left and it's harder to get there. So grab our pin, make sure this is pushed down, snapped into place. Find that hole, push that into place, roll it over, it's good. And then open your door as far as you need to get this into place. Make sure it's pushed down. Finding that hole again, push that in. There it is. You can kind of rock the pin back and forth. You just want to make sure it goes in all the way. And then once you roll that over, you're good. You can go ahead and give this a nice light pull upwards before you test it, just to make sure that that pin's on there. I should have done that on this side first, but just don't get crazy with it, but just give it a nice little tug there, just to make sure that it doesn't come flying off, because there is a chance that somehow maybe you didn't have it seated all the way, but just make sure that's good before you put any tension on it. Now we can clear everything out of our way and make sure it's working properly. And just some tips real quick here on kind of closing it. Obviously I have stuff in my way here, but if you have a tire or something on the back, kind of getting some leverage out here and pushing with your feet rather than your body if it's hard for you. That would be a tip. Definitely avoid grabbing onto this right here. This is an aftermarket piece, but don't grab onto your Mercedes emblem there. You're gonna wanna grab the door or come back to this surface here and just walk it in nice and easy. There it is. If you happen to cross thread your riv nut or it's spinning on you or any of that, this would be how you would get it out. Okay, so this is in the case that we put our riv nut in, it's not working, we need to replace it with one of the extras. Grab the size of the drill bit that you used to drill the hole for that riv nut, and then just carefully start drilling. And that's how that would go. Now it's drilled it out, you haven't made this hole bigger, forcing you to need a new, size riv nut or anything like that. Worst case, you're just gonna need to be careful because that might be hot. Get this off your drill bit so you can use your drill bit in the future, but that's basically it. I'll show you another one. You can kind of rock it around a little bit. If it's in there spinning, this is gonna be a little harder than what I showed you, and in that case, you're gonna kind of wanna rock around, maybe get some pliers on it or some, like a flathead screwdriver or anything like that. I can't tell you exactly what to do based on your situation because I'm not there with you going through it, but in theory it should be as simple as that. You're just drilling it out, you're basically tearing apart that edge where these two used to connect, and you're just drilling that out, disappears. So these are gonna ultimately fall into that bumper. So hopefully, if you have a magnet, you probably need a thinner one than this, but you can hopefully get in there and grab this. They are magnetic. So if you're fine with it, they're gonna be in there rattling around, but hopefully when you drill that out, it stays near your holes that you've drilled and you can get that out of there. But this is worst case scenario stuff we're talking about here. But at least you kind of know what that looks like should you hit that snag in the process. There you have it, folks. This concludes our installation video of the CAV stop stays. Hopefully this makes it a little bit easier for you DIYers out there trying this out on your own. But do know that we are here to help you to install these if you want to come to our facility here in Southern California. I know Owl Off-Road is doing these installations as well. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear it. All the information you're going to need is going to be below in the description. We'll see you on the next one. Have fun, stay safe out there. Bye.